America great again.
What does war look like from a soldier's point of view? Tens of millions of YouTube viewers now know, thanks to a video taken in Afghanistan that has gone viral.
The soldier crying out over and over to his platoon, "I'm hit." He intentionally took on fire to try to draw the fire away from his mates. And now we know who he is. Ted Daniels, that's his name.
Teddy Daniels.
The man, Teddy Daniels.
I'm Teddy Daniels, the soldier who took 4 bullets from that AK-47. And I believe that one of the reasons God let me survive that gunfight was to deliver this emergency broadcast to you right now. Do not click away from it.
What's going on here? Well, the story gets weirder. Food processing plants all over the country seem to be catching fire. This happen, of course, but this is a lot of industrial accidents at food processing facilities at the same time the president's warning us about food shortages. They're getting hit by planes and catching fire. What is going on here exactly?
On February 3rd, a massive fire ripped through Wisconsin River Meats in Mouston. That same exact day, another fire ravaged Percy Farm in Stowe, Vermont, killing hundreds of cows. About a week later, the Bonanza Meat Company in El Paso, Texas, burst into flames. And that very same day, the Shearer Food Plant in Hermiston got burnt to the ground. Just a few hours later, in Claypool, Indiana, a raging fire broke out at the largest soybean processing plant in the country. In the months prior to those incidents, there had been 93 other instances of food processing plants catching fire. Our administration and mainstream media has stated that all these fires must be a coincidence and are not a threat to our food supply. However, the cost of food in the U.S. has not only spiked tremendously over the last year, it's actually at an all-time high as we speak. Hi, I'm Teddy Daniels. I'm a father, combat veteran, a citizen journalist, and a private investigator who says it like it is and isn't afraid to ask the questions that mainstream media tries to cover up. In that spirit, let me ask you a question. Do you think that all these food processors catching fire are a coincidence? Who's responsible for these fires? And why does the cost of our food continue to skyrocket? Those exact questions are what triggered an initial investigation by me and my team. As we begin to dig, searching for a potential culprit, we started finding clip after clip just like this.
Chinese nationals have begun buying up tens of thousands of acres of farmland.
You are seeing the Chinese buy up America. They are waging an economic war on the United States.
America cannot allow China to control our food supply.
I was stunned. Could the Chinese Communist Party be connected to our food processor fires? And why were the Chinese buying up so many of our farms? That's when our investigation kicked into overdrive. Once again, I'm Teddy Daniels, and over the course of this short, scathing report, I will expose exactly what our team discovered and reveal indisputable evidence that America is on the cusp of the greatest food shortage in our nation's history. A food shortage that will trigger a deadly domino effect of mass panic, bloody brawls in bread lines, a full government shutdown, and ultimately starve America into submission. Then I'm going to peel back the curtain and show you rock-solid evidence that proves that we are now officially past the point of no return. And that means that this final famine is no longer a matter of if, but when. I will also reveal why right-wing conservatives, who are already under heavy attack in this country, are being specifically targeted and will be among this final famine's first victims. Because it's my belief that we have a Chinese spy with direct ties to Joe Biden operating inside our government as we speak, sabotaging any efforts to stop this famine. And despite great personal risk to myself, I will expose her identity in this report. So keep watching. Because more critically, I will show you what my team and many experts now believe is the only thing you can do to keep your family safe and well-fed once this catastrophe strikes. A simple tweak to your bedroom closet or any closet in your home that you're willing to empty out, plus 3 feet of copper wire. As far as we can tell, this empty closet hack is the only way to fully protect your family from the carnage that's to come. So when the woke liberals who let this happen are begging for your help, you can slam the door right in their face because you we're the ones smart enough to properly prepare. So watch the rest of this controversial report while you still can, before they deplatform me just like they did to Tucker and so many other patriots before him. No surprise, my team and I have made extremely powerful enemies by going public with this news. Enemies like the Chinese secret police, and even a radical, far-left faction of our own government, led by a renegade member of Congress with strong ties to communist China. So, if I suddenly die of a heart attack or get into a fatal car accident, I want to go on record right now and say it was not an accident. Bottom line, the next time you try coming back to this page, it will probably be gone. And you and your family could be left unprepared, scared, and starving, with nothing but the pitiful cries of, "I'm so hungry," coming from the people you love most. While you are forced to look them in the eye and say, "I'm sorry, we don't have any food left. I failed you, family." So put aside whatever else you might be doing right now. Trust me, it's not as important as what you're about to discover. And watch the rest of this report like the lives of your loved ones depend on it, because they actually do. First, some quick intel about me. I'm not an actor. This isn't a set, and those aren't props. This is my home. There's a picture of me with President Trump. There are my medals and my Purple Heart, which I bled for. I bled for a country that's betrayed us. And that betrayal is about to lead to the greatest disaster in our nation's history. But before I get into that, let me tell you a little more about who I am. So you know, I'm not some candy-ass pansy actor. As a young man, I was a state powerlifting champion. And I was a starting guard for the West Virginia Mountaineer football team. But what really made me proud was the long line of warriors I am descended from. My grandfather lost his leg on D-Day, and my other grandfather fought on Iwo Jima. They were hard men in hard times, and I looked up to them both. In a lot of ways, they're the reason I became a cop and eventually an investigator outside of Baltimore. But deep down, some part of me still felt like I hadn't done my part. Well, it was 2011. The war in Afghanistan started to get really bad. Our boys were coming home in body bags. So at 35 years old, I did something pretty crazy. Something that everyone told me, "Teddy, you're too old to do." I left my job as a deputy chief of police, and I joined the military. Because of my background as an investigator and my credentials, the Army basically offered me whatever specialty I wanted. Military intelligence, bomb technician, work on computers, you name it. Then I thought about what my grandfathers would have chosen. They would have chosen the hard thing. So I chose infantry. And the recruiters looked at me like I had lost my freaking mind. Before I knew it, I was sitting in the deadliest place on earth. Kunar Province, Afghanistan, better known as the Valley of Death. In Kunar, we got hit with rockets, IEDs, and mortar attacks every day. And because the Army had cross-trained me in ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, my job was to go out on every single patrol and talk to villagers to try to pinpoint the enemy's position. And when we got into gunfights, which was damn near every day, I'd search the bodies of the terrorists that we just smoked, hunting for intel. That's why I wore a helmet cam. On April 25th, 2012, my unit had just finished a patrol when we came under heavy fire. We were outnumbered and pinned down. And folks, cavalry wasn't coming. So I got a pretty stupid idea. I thought, you know, if I charge down that mountain towards the enemy, I can draw their fire off my unit and give my men a chance to return fire.
Somebody lay down some fire!
And that's what I did.
I'm hit!
That's you?
That's me.
That video of me getting shot went viral. It got over 100 million views, becoming the most watched combat video of all time. I got to meet the president, who even wrote me this letter. And I'm honored to say that my Purple Heart sits on President Trump's desk to this day. I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't love all the attention I was getting. I was on the front page of every paper in America. Hell, they even named a rifle after me, the Teddy 15. I guess some people thought I was some kind of hero, but those people were wrong. Let me be clear. The real heroes are the guys who never came home. They are the real heroes. And if they saw what was happening to America and the imminent danger to our food supply, I know they'd be as afraid as I am, and as angry as I am, that we've been stabbed in the back by members of our own government. And then the saying goes, I'm sure you've heard it, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Not to mention that I've got a 5-year-old son who means everything in the world to me, and I will do whatever I have to protect his future. So last year, I did something that, once again, everybody said I was crazy to do.
So you're running for Congress.
Yes, sir.
I ran for office just so I could try and stop the inside job on America's food supply. And if I was lucky, make some other long overdue changes while I was at it. Here's a clip from one of my campaign ads.
I'm Teddy Daniels, and I'm running for Congress in Scranton, Pennsylvania. You know, Joe Biden's hometown. I despise swampy, sellout politicians, and that's exactly why I'm running.
Well, no surprise, the establishment politicians didn't think they'd be able to control me. So they outspent me 10-1 and launched hit piece after hit piece after hit piece to try to stop me from shaking things up. Unfortunately, their sleazy Gestapo fascist tactics worked, and I came up just a hair short in the election. But it didn't matter. Folks, I don't quit, and I was never going to give up on America or give up on my son. That's when it hit me. I had years of experience investigating major crimes and was specially trained by the Army in gathering intelligence. Folks, I'm also a private investigator, licensed for years. I could use those skills to become an independent citizen journalist and report on the deadly facts that mainstream media is hiding from you. Facts like, did you know that close to 2/3 of the world's food reserve is inside of communist China right now? It's not a joke. Look it up. The U.S. Department of Agriculture recently declared that China has stockpiled almost 70% of the world's corn, 60% of the rice, and more than half of the world's wheat. This hoarding has not only led to rising food costs around the world, it's now causing dangerous food shortages throughout Europe and Africa. In fact, the president of the Natural Resource Institute, Akio Shibata, or however you say his name, just admitted that the skyrocketing cost of food is mainly due to hoarding by China. And that's a direct quote. Now, even though food prices are at an all-time high here at home, and some foods have simply vanished from our store shelves, it's still not as bad as what's going on in the rest of the world yet. And that's because 40% of America is farmland. In other words, unlike China, we have our own grain and meat supply to rely on. And if the Chinese were buying a few of our farms, no big deal, right? But just to be sure, I kept researching anyway, night after night. U.S. Department of Agriculture data shows that Chinese ownership of U.S. farmland leapt to $1.8 billion in 2020. Major Chinese companies, such as the Fufang Group, are buying up large plots of land near sensitive American military installations. A Chinese agricultural company set up a milling plant that is a 20-minute drive from a U.S. Air Force base. Senator John Hoeven. Okay, I was wrong. This is a big deal. Communist China publicly owns billions of dollars of U.S. farms. And not only have they been buying more and more of our precious farmland, but they've been doing it literally next door to critical power grids and top secret military installations. That's insane. Once again, how the hell was China getting away with this? It's almost like someone in our government was letting it happen. Then I found an article in Politico about U.S. Congressman and agricultural scientist Dan Newhouse. Folks, this gave me a shred of hope. In it, the congressman blew the whistle on communist China, and he said this: the current trend in the U.S. is leading us toward the creation of a Chinese-owned agricultural land monopoly. The article went on to state, House lawmakers warn that China's presence in the American food system poses a national security risk. Suddenly, I felt some relief. Our government was aware of this threat and apparently had decided to finally do something about it. In fact, in 2021, Congressman Newhouse introduced H.R. 7892 in Congress. This bill was designed to block any new agricultural purchases by the Chinese government. Hallelujah! Our government had taken action and was finally doing something useful with taxpayers' money, protecting our security and our way of life. For the first time in months, I got a good night's sleep, knowing that H.R. 7892 was making its way through Congress. America's food supply and my son's food supply was going to be protected by our federal government. Except that I was dead wrong as I dug deeper. I discovered that as of today, several years after Newhouse tried to push H.R. 7892 through the House, nothing has happened. Congressman Newhouse's bill still hasn't passed, in large part because this crucial amendment, which would help stop communist China from hijacking our food supply, has been ferociously opposed by a radical left-wing congresswoman out of New York, Grace Meng. Meng has used numerous arguments to block this crucial bill at every turn, stating the amendment was about national security. Buyers from other countries should also face similar restrictions. Hang on. Now let's break down this quote. Meng just said that if America wants to block China from buying our farms, then America has to block every other country in the world too. Or it's not fair to communist China. What? It's not fair? Talk about a pansy grade school excuse. But wait, guys, it gets better. Meng then claimed that if H.R. 7892 ever passes, it would perpetuate the already rising anti-Asian hate. What does her quote even mean? She's literally saying if we stop China from taking over our food supply, Americans will start to hate the Chinese. That doesn't even make sense. Wouldn't it be the other way around? If we don't stop communist China taking our food supply, I think Americans are going to be pretty pissed, because they'll be starving to death. But guess what? As lame as Meng's argument was, of course, the idiots in Congress bought it. Hook, line, and sinker, which as far as I can tell is the main reason H.R. 7892 still hasn't passed. So I started to investigate Grace Meng more closely and discovered some alarming facts. Like Grace Meng's father, Jimmy Meng, originally hailing from Shandong, China, jumped into politics shortly after moving to the U.S. With his daughter's support, Jimmy Meng ran for the New York State Assembly in 2004. And amazingly, Jimmy won that race, although his election was extremely controversial. Even the New York Post reported that Jimmy got elected using ghost voters. What are ghost voters? They're voters who don't exist, and it's the most blatant form of election fraud there is. Why would a Chinese immigrant run for office so soon after arriving in the U.S.? And why would he use ghost voters to make sure he got elected? Trump's national security advisor, Robert O'Brien, said that when it came to election interference, he considered China even more of a threat than Russia. By this point, guys, I had to ask, is it possible that the Chinese Communist Party was involved in Meng's election? Was Jimmy Meng a Chinese spy? Guys, I really can't say for sure. What I can say is that eventually, Jimmy's illegal activity caught up to him. In 2012, Jimmy was arrested by our government and pled guilty to fraud, which he was sent to jail for. Now his daughter has taken Jimmy's place in Congress. Is it so she can complete her father's mission? Well, if it is, she's doing a bang-up job so far, because Grace Meng has successfully used woke cancel culture bullshit to pull the wool over Congress's eyes and stop H.R. 7892 dead in its tracks. And just maybe to disguise the fact that our food supply is being quietly kidnapped by the Chinese government. And look, no joke, guys. I know I'm putting my life on the line just by saying this, but it's entirely possible that a faction of our own government is helping her do it. A faction that could go all the way up to the highest levels of our democracy.
When he met with the group, Biden said, they spoke about, quote, how we could increase and disseminate more rapidly food shortages.
And we both talked about how we could increase and disseminate more rapidly food shortages.
Now you could say, oh, Biden is just senile, flubbed his words. Or you can say Biden is senile and accidentally said something he wasn't supposed to. It's your call on that one. Then I made another shocking discovery. The Chinese, seemingly 2 steps ahead at every turn, had already pivoted and prepared in the event that H.R. 7892 was passed because they had found a gaping loophole. Shell companies. You see, H.R. 7892 states that only American companies can purchase American farmland. But what about an American company that's owned by an American company, that's owned by a company in Morocco, that's actually owned by the Chinese government? In other words, an elaborate, untraceable maze of shell companies that eventually lead back to Beijing. You think it isn't happening? Senators Mark Warner and Mike Rounds have been trying to warn the rest of our government that it already is, and recently went on record to say these shell companies have proven to be key tools in China's corrupt and tightening grip on the country. That's when I realized I had been wrong the whole time. I believed that the security of our food supply hinged on H.R. 7892 getting passed in Congress, but it wasn't. If Meng and her communist cronies were somehow beaten back and H.R. 7892 were to pass at some point, it wouldn't matter one bit. The Chinese had found an unfillable loophole. A loophole that means American farmers have no clue who they are really selling their land to. Folks, that's when it dawned on me. My son was in danger. We all were. Because it was too late. If the years I spent calling out crooked corporations taught me anything, it's this. Whoever has a controlling interest controls the entire supply chain. Like how Elon Musk took over Twitter. Elon quietly purchased around 10% of Twitter's publicly traded shares. But 10% was more than enough to give him a controlling interest in the company. You see, the Chinese don't have to own 100% of our farms to cause a massive disruption in our food supply. In fact, by my very conservative estimates, they would only need to own approximately 6% of U.S. farms to have the power to pull the plug on America's food supply. Well, communist China already owns billions of dollars of U.S. farmland publicly. But how much more do they own via secret shell companies? And how much more are they buying every single day? There's no way to know for sure. But here's what I do know. If Beijing doesn't control more than 6% of U.S. farmland as of this very moment, it's just a matter of time before they do. Maybe it's next year. Maybe it's next week. In other words, I believe that due to Grace Meng and her minions, we are well past the point of no return. And China is a button push away from triggering a national food crisis, unlike anything our country has ever seen. A crisis that will start with a stockpiling frenzy. You might recall when COVID came out of China and Americans panicked. Suddenly, bloody brawls erupted in stores across the country to get the last roll of toilet paper. Remember that?
I just want one pack. No, not one pack.
Toilet paper practically turned into gold. You couldn't find it anywhere. Not in stores, not on Amazon, not on the internet. And this insane toilet paper shortage lasted for months. All because a handful of scared Americans started to buy up massive amounts of it, which pretty much forced everyone else to start doing the same thing. But what if this panicked stockpiling frenzy wasn't over toilet paper, but over something critical to your family's survival? Like food? How much worse would those supermarket brawls have been? How many Americans would have died to get the last can of soup at Walmart? Hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands? I really can't say for sure. But what I can say is, with communist China controlling our food supply, we are almost certainly going to find out. And guys, I think it's going to be a massacre. By the way, if you're growing your own food and think your family is safe? You're wrong. Communist China and Russia have a manufacturing monopoly on fertilizers and pesticides, so America is forced to import from our enemies. And just like that, they can pull the plug or worse, inject harmful chemicals that seep into our food, and I don't know, slowly drain our testosterone until we're defenseless sheep, ripe for enslavement and slaughter. Think it couldn't happen? Looks like it already is. I know it all sounds pretty scary, folks, but at least I can give you a little bit of good news, because there is one American who is definitely aware of Xi Jinping's threat to America, and he's trying to help. He's buying up as many of our farms as he can.
April, you're reporting Bill Gates started buying land in 2013 through a web of shell companies across the country.
Bill Gates became the largest individual owner of farmland in America.
And the land that he's buying up, he's taking out of food production.
Sorry, did I say this was good news? Well, it's not. It's terrible news. Because guess who he's trying to help?
I tend to see China's rise as a huge win for the world.
Hi, I'm Bill Gates. I'd like to extend belated Chinese New Year greetings to you, and thanks to Xinhua News Agency for inviting me to share a few reflections.
As it turns out, Gates appears to have a very close relationship with Xi Jinping, the grand dictator of the Chinese Communist Party.
Bill Gates meeting with Xi Jinping, calling him a friend. Xi calls Gates a friend.
So let me ask you this. Why the hell is Bill Gates, who spent his whole life doing nerdy computer stuff, suddenly buying up our farms too? And why did he start buying so many of our farms after he and Ping got to be besties? Now here's the bottom line. Communist China has slithered into our farms, twisted its way around our food supply, and can now dramatically alter its price. In other words, they can do whatever the hell they want. They can ship all of our grain, corn, and meat directly to China, feed the 1.4 billion hungry people who live there, and leave our cupboards and store shelves bare. Or they can sell our own food back to us at an enormous markup. Let me guess, you don't think that'll happen either? It's happening right now.
Americans especially getting hit hard at the grocery store. The price of items like dried beans, canned vegetables, flour, all up better than 10% from the same time just 1 year ago.
One food item in particular is up by some standards more than 5 times what it's been in the past.
Mainstream media blames our skyrocketing food costs on lots of things. Inflation, Russian sanctions, droughts, COVID, etc., etc. But a massive amount of evidence points to communist China as the true culprit behind our rising food costs. Just think about it. We already know that China is buying up more and more of our farms every single day, both publicly and through secret shell companies. And as they're doing this, the cost of our food keeps going up. Do you believe that's a coincidence? Because I believe it's just the tip of the iceberg. And history itself proves over and over that nothing, and I mean nothing, brings out the desperate, dark side of human nature like hunger. I know, because I've seen it firsthand when I was deployed in Afghanistan. Just ask yourself this. What would you do to keep your starving family alive? Would you hunt for rats that are hiding in dumpsters? Would you boil and eat the leather in your shoes for sustenance? Would you kill a neighbor who's trying to steal the last of your dwindling food supply? It's hard to imagine saying yes to any of these questions. We have enough knowledge from our past to know the answer beyond any doubt. Yes, you would. So would I. That's what extreme hunger drives us to. And due to a recent chain of suspicious incidents, I believe America could be just moments away from that reality. And moments away from the next phase of this famine. Tucker was the first to report on it.
Food processing plants all over the country seem to be catching fire.
But even after Tucker got booted, the fires quietly continued.
Firefighters trying to figure out what sparked a fire at a food processing plant on the west side.
A huge fire at a food processing plant.
Breaking news in Eastern Oregon, where crews are battling a major fire at a potato chip processing plant.
That breaking news, a huge fire at a food processing plant in Racine County. Chopper 4 is live over the scenes.
And these food processor fires are not only continuing as we speak, they seem to be increasing in frequency. Radical left-controlled media chalks these fires up as mere coincidences, or as far-right wacko conspiracy theories. Or more likely, they simply bury the story. Guys, I still have friends in the military, and I have friends in Congress who are loyal patriots. And let's just say that I know for a fact these fires are not a coincidence. They are a part of multi-pronged attack on America's food supply, designed to crush our infrastructure, so all that's left under the ashes are the farms that are firmly in the clutches of the Chinese. And based on my intel, I also believe that these fires are the last domino to fall before communist China pulls the plug on our food. Now listen to me very carefully. America is barreling towards a catastrophic starvation event of biblical proportions. And I mean biblical literally. You know the old saying, there are no atheists in a foxhole? Well, it's true. Because when I charged down that hill in Afghanistan, getting hit with shrapnel, bullet fragments left and right, guys, I had a little talk with God. But even if you are an atheist, you can't deny that the following predictions, straight out of the Bible, are eerily on point. Deuteronomy 28:33 predicts, a nation whom you have not known shall eat the fruit of your land and the produce of your labor, and you shall be oppressed and crushed continually. Leviticus 26:16 declares, and you shall sow your seed in vain, for your enemies shall eat it. And when describing the end of times, the final days of our civilization, Revelations 1:12 warns, and a great red dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she bore her child, he might devour it. When I first read that passage in Revelations, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Was the woman giving birth just a metaphor for America's fertile farmland? Could her child somehow be America's precious food supply? And was the red dragon, who was so hungry to devour the child, really just communist China? I don't know for sure, but I do know that for thousands of years, China's universal symbol has been the red dragon, and that the Bible has long prophesied that a hellish food shortage is on the way. A food shortage that, as rumor has it, has even been given a nickname by several Pentagon officials: the final famine. What does all of this mean? It means every patriot needs to prepare immediately. That's a given. Question is, how do you prepare for a famine of biblical proportions? Well, the answer is kind of obvious. You need to stockpile a tremendous amount of food that never goes bad. Because if official predictions or biblical predictions are even close to correct, this famine could last for years. Ironically, this simple stockpiling strategy is exactly how my unit prepared when we deployed to the Valley of Death. Because we never knew when the enemy would launch an assault or how long that assault would prevent us from resupplying. But the potential length of this famine was far beyond anything we've ever dealt with on the battlefield. Frankly, guys, I'm a gunfighter. I'm not a food expert. That's why I recruited a world-class food scientist to evaluate the most popular survival food brands. After all, quality of the food I was going to stockpile might literally make the difference between life and death for my son, and I wasn't going to leave that up to chance. So we got our hands on every survival food we could and analyzed each one down to the microscopic level. And I'm ashamed to even say this, but we were absolutely shocked by what we found. 3 fatal food secrets that the survival companies don't want you to know. Fatal food secret number 1, deadly portions. Now guys, most dehydrated food companies claim you're getting so many meals that your family will survive for months. But here's the dirty little secret. Each of those so-called meals contains very few calories. In fact, a lot of those meals would make a dinner at Auschwitz look like an all-you-can-eat buffet. At the best, these meals should be labeled light snacks. And when we looked for life-saving micronutrients, you know, the vitamins and minerals you need for strong bones, a strong immune system, to avoid getting sick, we barely found a trace. Fatal food secret number 2, leaky packaging. Most dehydrated food manufacturers claim their foods can last a lifetime. But we quickly realized that some of the most popular survival foods were going bad within months. Not to mention that some of the packages we received were ripped and oozing rotten food out of them. At first we were stumped. Why was their food going bad so quickly? Then the food scientists cracked it. The problem wasn't with the food, but with the packaging. It was leaking, which allowed oxygen to contaminate the food inside. You see, when oxygen interacts with food, it causes it to break down. Now, if you've ever left a banana out for more than a week, you know what I'm talking about. It goes rotten fast. And that's what happens with most survival foods. Leaky packaging shatters shelf life and makes the food go rancid. And unfortunately, it was letting in a lot more than just oxygen. Humidity, light, and heat were also piercing through their packaging and causing the food to break down even faster, not to mention making it taste terrible. Now, folks, if you take a look at me, I like food. I can tell you what tastes good and what doesn't. In fact, I tried many of the most popular brands, and they tasted so bad, I wouldn't even feed them to my dog, let alone my family. Fatal food secret number 3, made in America? More like made in Beijing. Next, I used my intelligence background to dig deep into how most survival food brands actually source their ingredients. And what I uncovered sent chills down my spine. Ever noticed that many survival foods say they're made in America? Well, it turns out that quite a few of them aren't. But they try to get away with saying made in America because technically they assembled all the ingredients here. But some of the most critical ingredients are shipped straight out of Beijing. Now, when we uncovered this fact, I wasn't angry. I actually felt bad for these companies because, just like the rest of America, they too are at the mercy of communist China. And at the end of the day, they're just doing their best to stay in business. So I couldn't really blame them. But I can't stake my family's lives on any of the survival foods that we had evaluated. Then the words of my dad, I heard bouncing around inside my head. If you want something done right, do it yourself, Teddy. So I pushed forward, looking for anyone who could help me make an all-American survival food that not only has the generous portions needed to keep you alive, but can actually last up to 25 years and still taste delicious. Survival food my family deserves. So I tapped into my network to see if I could identify any trustworthy food manufacturers. And out of hundreds of companies across America, only one stood apart from the rest. A resilient, state-of-the-art food processing operation in Utah. A survival food company that not only practices what it preaches, but also happens to be fully aware of the catastrophic food shortage on our horizon. Which is why they build an infrastructure that gives them complete control of their supply chain. Something no other survival food company on the planet has ever achieved. When I asked them if we can make survival food that could last decades, yet still taste delicious and maintain 100% of its nutritional value right here on American soil, they told me, yes, we can. And that's when Famine Fighter was born. Let me tell you why Famine Fighter is the only survival food I'd stake my family's lives on, and why it's the only survival food on the planet that can actually last up to 25 years and still taste damn delicious. Not to mention, unlike virtually all of the survival foods on the market, Famine Fighter actually gives you portions that keep you full, satisfied, and nourished. If you're wondering how that's even possible, well, the key is in its state-of-the-art, patented double oxygen shield technology, which works like this. First, wholesome ingredients like potatoes, pasta, and breads are sourced from local farms. Farms which we confirmed are not secretly controlled by Chinese operatives, something which I'm pretty sure the other survival food companies didn't do. Then, state-of-the-art AI technology thoroughly examines these ingredients to target and terminate any microscopic contaminants. By the way, after investigating the other food companies, I'm confident my manufacturing partners are the only folks in the world using this technology. Now, after that, food scientists and nutritionists, they work carefully to blend these ingredients together in their optimal ratios. The result? Real food that provides you and your family the nutrients you'll need to not just survive this final famine, but prosper throughout it. Next, the food, which has been rigorously tested for both purity and taste, is then poured into famine fighters' patented double oxygen shield pouches, which, by the way, was developed by an R&D team of world-class culinary chefs, material science engineers, and other experts. Now, because this technology is proprietary, I can only say this. Unlike virtually all other survival food brands on the market, or that you would even see on Amazon, which use cheap aluminum pouches that easily tear, Famine Fighter's sophisticated pouch utilizes a combination of metallized plastic and micro nylon to create a shield of protection that's so strong it's practically puncture-proof. And because of this puncture-proof protection, no humidity, moisture, or temperature can jeopardize the ingredients inside. Plus, the pouch's black light protection layer further prevents light from coming in. All in, each pouch comes with 4 heavy-duty layers of armor. Not to mention, inside each pouch of Famine Fighter, there's a double oxygen absorber that absorbs 100% of the oxygen inside. In other words, the premium food inside each pouch of Famine Fighter is essentially frozen in time, which is why the meals you get with Famine Fighter stay delicious and nutritious for up to 25 years, guaranteed. And each supply of Famine Fighter gives you 3 full months of delicious food and more than 16 flavorful food varieties, like creamy chicken-flavored rice, delicious full buttermilk pancakes, rich chili mac, Italian spaghetti, decadent chocolate pudding, sweet honey wheat bread, and tangy Southwest rice, and much, much more. Plus, Famine Fighter gives you a whopping 1,800 calories a day for 90 days, which is what you'll need to stay satisfied, healthy, and strong when the final famine rips through America. Now, it wasn't easy or cheap to do, but we went even further. And we made stockpiling Famine Fighter as simple as stacking your Tupperware. By storing all of its heavy-duty pouches in rugged, water-resistant buckets built specifically for long-term storage. These buckets are not only ultra-durable, built from the same high-grade plastic material used by NASA, they're also easy to stack and configure with whatever space you have in your home. That's just one more way the Famine Fighter stands head and shoulders above everything else. Now, for the sake of you and your family's future, I really hope that right now you're wondering how to get your hands on Famine Fighter today, before this final famine strikes. And you might also be wondering how much Famine Fighter you should stock up on, so that you and your loved ones are fully prepared and protected, no matter how bad things get. Well, folks, I'm going to shoot you straight and give you the same advice I'd give to my own brothers. Get as much as you can afford, because when this famine kicks off, there's a very good chance the food you stock up on today will be worth more than money, more than gold, and more than anything you own. So you should act fast. To be blunt, producing big batches of Famine Fighter has been a serious challenge, because frankly, the premium ingredients that go in each pouch, folks, they ain't cheap. And the proprietary pouch technology that protects and preserves your food is not only expensive, but it's very labor intensive. That's why we can only get our hands on small batches at any given time. However, if this video is still playing, you can still lock in your life-saving supply of Famine Fighter right now. But that could change at any moment, because not only are we at risk of selling out, but over the course of this report, I have openly called out the Chinese government, members of our own government, and even popular survival companies who are selling subpar products. Do you honestly think they're going to let me keep doing this? So if you try coming back to this website and it's gone, well, now you know why. Perhaps even more urgently, the Chinese Communist Party already has a controlling interest in our food supply right now and could cripple it anytime they want. And when they do, they're not going to give us a formal warning. Once this food shortage strikes, your ability to get your hands on Famine Fighter will almost certainly be lost forever. At which point, the only option you and your loved ones might have is to stay up all night, waiting in government-controlled bread lines, hoping to get some measly ration that barely fills your stomachs. Or worse, to compete with and even fight fellow Americans for the last can of Spam on the store shelf, which makes getting Famine Fighter in your hands even more urgent. Now, with that said, you should know that Famine Fighter is only available on this website, and only while there are buckets still in stock, which means it's extremely important you get your supply today. Because if you delay and we run out of stock, you could put you and your family in a bad position when the final famine strikes. Do you really want to rely on our government, who let toilet paper go out of stock for almost a year, for something as critical as food? Do you want to be dependent on food rations, bread lines, or the goodwill of a prepared neighbor? Well, if there's one thing I've learned in all my years, is you never leave your family's safety up to chance. Hopefully by now you realize that in a sea of survival foods that taste like dog food and easily go rancid, Famine Fighter rises far above the competition. That's how much better it really is, and how much better prepared you'll be to fully protect your family when the shit hits the fan. Look, I'm on a mission to ensure every American is prepared for what is to come. That's why I'm offering Famine Fighter at the biggest discount I can afford, as part of my never get hungry guarantee. So when you invest in Famine Fighter right now, you won't have to spend $2,375, which is what the average American family spends each year dining out. A luxury that will definitely disappear once this famine heats up. Because if you thought COVID was bad for restaurants, wait until the cost of basic ingredients go up by 10 times, 20 times, and then 30 times the amount they are now.
When you invest in your 3-month supply of Famine Fighter right now, I'll give it to you for as low as $790.
Just click the button you see now to lock in your order while you still can. And look, I know that this may seem like a big investment, but when you think about what's on the line, and you think about the deadly sword of starvation hanging over America's head, you need to ask yourself one question. How much is my family's safety really worth?
When you invest in your 3-month supply of Famine Fighter right now and fill an empty closet with it, you'll be getting nutritious and delicious dinners for as low as $8.78 per meal.
I think that's a pretty square deal, especially when you consider the average meal in America is $13 and climbing by the day. You know, a lot of folks tell me that these meals are less expensive, healthier, and better tasting than the food they get from the grocery store. With that said, you might be tempted to start eating your supply right away. Not only to save money on groceries, but also to feel great and get in better shape. Here's what I have to say. If you can resist the temptation, do it. Your supply of Famine Fighter has a higher purpose: to ensure you and your family are prepared for the final famine. However, if for whatever reason you can't resist, all I ask is you do your best to keep your supply stockpiled. So please, click the button you see right now to secure your supply of Famine Fighter while you still can. Now, with all that said, I gotta confess something to you. Is stocking up on Famine Fighter going to guarantee you survive this famine? No, it's not. I mean, yes, obviously it's going to dramatically increase your family's chances of survival, but it's not a guarantee. Here's why. As the famine progresses, the country is going to rip itself apart until it implodes. And just because you have enough food doesn't mean you'll be fully prepared to deal with all the new and deadly threats that this famine will trigger. Just ask yourself, could the final famine trigger a hostile invasion from the east, a full government breakdown, an EMP attack, a nationwide blackout, medication shortages, a contaminated water supply, martial law, or even a civil war? The answers to these questions and many more might shock you.
And that's why, when you invest in your Famine Fighter food supply today, I'm also going to ship you my new book that normally sells for $67. Absolutely free.
It's called Final Famine: How to Keep Your Family Fat and Happy While the World Starves. This life-saving book is designed to be your last line of defense as the world crumbles around you. You see, the big problem with this famine is with a foreign enemy in control of our food supply. There's no escape route. There's no off button. In other words, this famine could go on indefinitely. And frankly, if that happens, even if you stock up on as much Famine Fighter as you can today, at some point, you could still run out. So you're going to need a plan B. And that's where my book steps in to save the day. Because not only will Final Famine take you by the hand and expose the unique threats of a prolonged food shortage, it will show you how to fully prepare for them. Just as critically, inside Final Famine, I'll show you how to build the only on-demand food growing system on the planet powered by electroponics. Electroponics is a brand new state-of-the-art technology that combines modern hydroponics with the power of electricity. Electricity which gets mainlined directly into whatever food you're growing. And that's exactly why, with this incredible method, plants can grow up to 300% bigger than what you normally get. Not to mention that the food is much richer with nutrients, life-saving vitamins and minerals, is tastier than you could ever imagine, and can be grown indoors or out. More importantly, electroponics is the only food growing system that doesn't rely on Chinese-made fertilizers, pesticides, or chemicals. And Final Famine will show you step by step how to easily build your own electroponic system and have it up and running in very little time. More importantly, it's designed to work for anyone, no matter where you live, how old you are, or how much survival experience you have. So whether you're an ex-Green Beret that lives on a 20-acre farm or a 73-year-old grandmother who lives in a studio apartment, Final Famine will ensure you and your family have a plan B, ready to go in case you ever run out of Famine Fighter. Because if there's one thing I learned in Afghanistan, it's that in a world of chaos and destruction, it's always good to have options. And with Famine Fighter and Final Famine by your side, one thing's for sure, you will never have to rely on the U.S. food supply again. A supply that you now know is controlled by the Red Hand of China. And because the consequences of this food shortage will go far beyond empty supermarket shelves, Final Famine goes above and beyond too. Inside this urgent, life-saving book, you'll not only discover the entire blueprint to building your own self-sufficient food supply, you'll also discover the final red flag. Watch out for this DEFCON 5 warning sign that will indicate food riots are about to begin. Hint, regardless of whether or not you trust our government, you'll want to watch the next congressional hearing very closely. EMP time bomb. Is communist China planning an attack on America's outdated power grid? Well, according to the Department of Homeland Security, the Chinese aren't planning an attack. It's already begun. Inside Final Famine will show you our evidence and reveal the strange copper blanket you'll need to cover all of your electronics with. The spy inside your bedroom. Uncover how the Chinese government steals your personal information using a popular home appliance, and how it's massively increasing your risk of identity theft, bank fraud, and something much worse. Plus, the 1980s radio that will jam their surveillance for good. Concentration camps for Christians. You already know that communist China owns billions of dollars of U.S. farms. But what are they really building on these farms? And what kind of food is coming out of them? Discover their sinister secret inside Final Famine. You think eggs have gotten expensive? Discover the 3 beloved foods that are next on the chopping block and about to become completely unaffordable for most Americans. Stock up and freeze these 3 staples now before their price skyrockets out of control. Are famines getting more fatal? From the Boston bread riots of 1710 to the Irish potato famine of 1846, which, folks, killed over 1 million people, history is crystal clear. Famines are getting deadlier and deadlier. However, all famines share one thing in common. Knowing what it is will make everyone in your neighborhood see you as their leader when the shit hits the fan. Emergency hydration. Unearth the secrets of turning dirty water into crystal clear drinking water that gives you and your loved ones the crucial life-saving hydration you'll need in an emergency. All you'll need is a bucket, garden hose, and this odd-looking device from your local hardware store. All of these secrets and more are inside of your full-color copy of Final Famine. And this controversial, groundbreaking book is yours absolutely free when you invest right now in Famine Fighter and invest in your family's future. Now, Famine Fighter and Final Famine, how to keep your family fat and happy while the world starves, are only available on this website. And only for as long as I'm able to share them with you, which may not be for long. Just think about it for a second. Over the course of this controversial video, I have openly called out the Chinese government. These are literally some of the most powerful, deceptive, and dangerous people in the world. And I'm not just talking about kung fu. And if you think members of the Chinese Communist Party are thousands of miles away and can't get to me, think again.
So 2 men were taken into custody by the FBI, accused of setting up a secret and illegal police station right here in Manhattan on behalf of the Chinese government.
Guys, they're already here. Oh yeah. And over the course of this report, I've also called out members of our own government. But there's a light at the end of the tunnel, because Famine Fighter has already helped countless Americans prepare for this event. Imagine always having a surplus of healthy, delicious food for you and your family, and more than enough food to help others who are hungry. And if the shortage lasts longer than 6 months, like some officials are predicting, and you ever run out of your supply of Famine Fighter, my book will give you the confidence, courage, and surplus food you'll need as America descends into chaos. A chaos that, according to some experts, could transform our country into a fourth world shithole country where food becomes the new currency. And look, I really hope it doesn't come to that. But the fact is, China is dangling our food supply above our heads like a slippery puppet master. So you and your family must be ready for a worst case scenario. And Famine Fighter, along with Final Famine, is the best protection, and maybe the only protection there is that will insulate you from this impending disaster. And there's something else you need to know too. Based on the evidence from U.S. senators and national security officials, once this famine begins, it's going to be a monumental event that will have a huge ripple effect that will impact every aspect of society and will have far greater consequences than anything America has ever experienced. Sadly, the harsh reality is millions of people will probably die. And I'm not talking about a quick and painless death. I'm talking about a slow, excruciating agony that drags on for weeks until, close your eyes for the last time. Guys, I hate to use such graphic imagery, but this is serious. And I would hate for you, or anyone you know, to become a statistic. That's why I'm urging you to take advantage of this opportunity while you still can. And while we still have Famine Fighter left in stock, click the button you see now to lock in your supply before it's too late. Okay, you're still here? I mean, seriously, folks. If you're still on the fence about this investment, after all of the stone cold evidence I presented, now I'm starting to worry about you. And when I say worry, I mean it literally, because you and your family are in serious danger. But I'm going to try one last time to help you see the light before it's too late. Here are a few of the most common questions I get about Famine Fighter. How long will Famine Fighter and Final Famine, how to keep your family fat and happy while the world starves, be available online? As much as I'd love to say forever, the truth is this famine could enter its next phase at any moment. And when it does, chaos and mass confusion will follow immediately. Beyond that, I strongly suspect that the powers that be have already targeted me and targeted this website for liquidation. After all, they can't be happy that I'm blowing the whistle on what they're doing, or that I'm offering what might be the only way for you to fight this famine. For all I know, this website and your ability to get your hands on Famine Fighter and Final Famine could vanish at any moment. But if you're still watching, it means there's still a chance to get your hands on this life-saving food supply and critical survival manual. Just click the button you see right now to get started. How long until I receive my supply of Famine Fighter food and my copy of Final Famine, and how does the shipping work? When you click the button you see right now, you'll be taken to our ultra-secure order form. Just enter your details. Hit the button and boom! You'll instantly receive an email confirmation with a tracking number the moment you place your order. So you'll know exactly when your shipment will arrive, which is typically within just a few days. But if we're slammed with orders, it could take up to a week. And if you order by 3 p.m., your emergency food supply and book will be shipped that very same day. Our goal is to rush your supply of Famine Fighter and your copy of Final Famine to you as soon as possible. Because like I said before, the collapse of America's food supply could literally happen at any moment. So please make sure you're ready. Is it safe to buy online? Yes, absolutely. We pride ourselves on using state-of-the-art SSL encryption. And frankly, it's because we have to. When you piss off as many powerful people as I have, you have no choice but to invest in the very best security measures. Security measures that fully protect your personal information. On top of that, we don't even store your credit card number, so there's nothing for them to steal. That's why you can feel good and safe when you click the button you see right now and invest in your family's future. Where is my Famine Fighter food made? Famine Fighter survival food is homegrown and made right here in the USA. Plus, all of the ingredients are sourced locally right here in America. And your Famine Fighter emergency food supply is packaged and shipped directly from Utah, USA. And everything is made in a state-of-the-art, super sterile facility packed with hard-working patriots, super genius yet nerdy scientists, and culinary masters. How much food do I get? Your supply of Famine Fighter gives you over 1,800 calories of food a day for one person. So guys, don't settle for anything less, because the reality is when this famine kicks off, the world is going to become very different than anything you've ever imagined. Think Mad Max on steroids. Bottom line, when things get tough, people do burn a lot of calories, and that's a fact. And it's one more reason the other survival food companies didn't make the cut for me. Almost all of them have significantly less calories than Famine Fighter. And as crazy as it sounds, the extra calories packed into every Famine Fighter meal could make the difference between surviving and thriving when things get really bad. Now remember, the 3-month supply of Famine Fighter is for one person. So if you have a family and you want to make sure they're protected too, you should absolutely order a larger package if it's still in stock. What if I get full? from just half a famine fighter meal? Or I'm trying to conserve my supply? Great question. As mentioned before, with Famine Fighter, you're getting way more food than average. Unlike other brands that try to peddle a mere 1,500 calories a day, which is not enough food by FDA standards, Famine Fighter gives you a whopping 1,800 calories a day for 90 days. It's enough food to fill you up and then some, which is why each pouch of Famine Fighter is resealable, so you don't have to eat it all at once. Eat as much as you can now, then simply reseal your heavy-duty, 4-layer, double oxygen shield pouch and put it back on your shelf for later. How long is the expiration date on this food? Famine Fighter survival food is designed to last for up to 25 years. And yes, that's not a typo, and I ain't making it up. It's designed to last for up to 25 years. So you don't have to worry about it going bad. That said, it's best to store your survival food in a cool, dry place, dark if possible, at temperatures between 55 degrees, 70 degrees. On top of that, unopened food pouches keep their shelf life even after you open the bucket. How big are the buckets? Each bucket of Famine Fighter measures to be 9.75 inches by 11.75 inches by 15.75 inches, which makes them incredibly easy to stack and store. So click the button you see right now and secure your Famine Fighter food supply and your copy of Final Famine while you still can. Okay, those are the most common questions I get about Famine Fighter, as well as Final Famine. Hoping yours was answered. So please, click the button you see now to get your hands on your supply of Famine Fighter food. Lock in your deep discount and get instant access to my controversial book, Final Famine. Instead of being caught with your pants down as the greatest famine of all time strikes America like a lightning bolt. A famine predicted by U.S. senators, congressmen, top military brass, and even the Holy Bible. A famine that, just by looking at the growing cost of groceries, you can see has already started. So get your hands on your supply of Famine Fighter and your copy of Final Famine right now before it's too late. Because I know that anyone who has listened this far can sense that something is very, very wrong and that America is facing existential crisis, unlike anything we've ever had to fight. And I believe with all my heart and soul that Famine Fighter and Final Famine are the best way and maybe the only way for you to fight it. You get the point. Don't leave your safety or your family's safety up to chance. Click the button you see now, enter your information on our ultra secure checkout page, and secure your supply of Famine Fighter and your copy of Final Famine before it's too late. Okay? Thank you so much for hearing me out and weighing all the evidence that I presented. Whatever you decide, I wish you the very best in the days to come. Good luck, God bless your family, and God bless America.